We can move on swiftly, Pete, talk about Leeds with another potential points deduction. Can you give us some news on that, please, and what that might look like for the club going forwards?
Yeah, obviously Leeds announced their accounts recently, and some interesting figures in there. Probably the most eye-catching one was that they owe £190 million in unpaid transfer fee to other clubs. So yeah, that's a worrying sign for Leeds United, especially now when you've seen Sheffield United were hit with a 2-point deduction by the EFL after defaulting on some transfer fee payments as well, which I think was around £9 million, and those were for, I understand, some transfer fees that were owed to Liverpool for Ryan Brewster. So that was quite a few years ago in that one. So they had a 2-point suspended as well on that one. So it was a potential 4-point deduction. That's a lot of money Leeds need to repay, 190 million. That is a big amount of money to pay. And again, if the owners don't pay up the clubs, these clubs can take these issues to FIFA, the FA, and everything else. And that's when it could get really ugly for Leeds United as well. And you've also, the accounts weren't great from Leeds as well. It was another, I think, a 34 million loss as well this year. And the year previously it was 37 million. So they're getting close to that sort of point of, I think you're allowed 83 million over the 3-year period in the EFL. So their next accounts after June 30th, when they do file them, will make for interesting reading as well. So yeah, worrying times for Leeds with all that money in unpaid fees still to be paid to those clubs, and then obviously their own finances as well. So I think Leeds United really need to get back in that Premier League, because that will go a long way to helping their financial situation.
Paul, what did you make of that news, and sort of does that dampen the hopes of promotion, knowing that there is all this money to cover, and actually going into next season, how much of a cloud do you think that could hang over the club as a whole?
It could, but you look at what the revenue the Premier League brings, and it's the television, the sponsorship, and everything else. Leeds United is a huge football club. The fan base, the revenue that Leeds turn over, not just in this country but globally, they're bigger than a lot of the teams that are in the Premier League now. And for them to go back into the Premier League, but there's another question about the stadium. You know, Ellen Road's been in need of repair for a long time. They're talking about whether they're going to redevelop the ground, but if the money isn't there to generate revenue, look at Everton, the new stadium that they've got. They've gone to try and better themselves and get a new stadium to increase revenue. It's difficult to do when you're going to get fined for that. But the accounts are certainly worrying, but I think the Premier League will obviously come as a huge bonus to Leeds if that is the case. You just hope that there's no overspend that costs them a points deduction, because getting into the Premier League is hard enough, but starting off already snookered behind the black ball with a points deduction, it's difficult to stay in there. So in a similar way to Sheffield United last season, we've seen Sheffield United, I think if you believe what you read, if they didn't go into the Premier League last year, financially it was a disaster for them. They started the Premier League weaker than they finished the Championship with the squad that they had, because they had to sell players going into the Premier League. And this Premiership money has kept them going and kept their head above water.
Pete, are we expecting sales at Ellen Road going into the summer with this news looming, or actually is it likely that the club are going to cover the costs?
Well, obviously winning promotions to Premier League would go a long way to covering those costs, and they can pay off any of those outstanding transfer fees. Again, a lot of those players who were loaned out in the summer will probably be returning to Ellen Road in pre-season, and I'm sure the club will be maybe looking to move them on permanently, and obviously that will help the finances as well. So I think if they can get to the Premier League, which they're well placed to do right now, I don't think there'll be a massive need to sell players. Obviously, some of their star players will attract interest. The likes of Crescencio Somerville, Archie Gray, Willie Nonto, there'll be interest in those players. There's no doubt about that. But I think if they do go up, I'm sure Leeds will be pretty confident that they can keep hold of their squad and the players, and have a bit of a budget as well to go on and strengthen the squad as well. They're desperate to try and make Joe Rodon's move permanent, and I think there is an option in there to do that if they do win promotion to the Premier League as well. And Daniel Farke will be demanding that he'll be back in the transfer market as well to bring in some new players as well. So a lot will depend on how much money they can get for some of those players that return from those liens, because that really hamstrung Leeds this season with those clauses in the players' contracts. If they were relegated, they could go out on loan rather than being sold. So that obviously hit Leeds' financials a lot, because if they were able to sell some of those players last summer, that would have made their accounts a lot healthier.
Pete, going into the Premier League, I know one name you mentioned there was Somerville. I know there was some interest from Aston Villa. Are we expecting multiple bids for him, given that he is Championship Player of the Year? Or actually, if they are promoted, do you think there is a chance they'll be able to keep hold of him?
Yeah, I think if Leeds go up, real strong chance that they can keep hold of him. If they don't go up, I'd say it's almost inevitable that Somerville will move on. The player himself will want to play in the Premier League. There's no doubt about that. He's been outstanding in the Championship this season. He saw his goal against Middlesbrough the other night as well. He's been a standout player in the EFL. So, yeah, there was interest in Somerville last summer. There was interest in him in January as well. A number of clubs do like the look of the Dutchman, and they'll be monitoring that situation at Leeds to see what is going on. But I think if Leeds do go up, they'll be well positioned to keep Somerville. And I think, obviously, the player himself, I'm sure, will be happy to stay at Leeds United if they do secure promotion back to the top flight.
Paul, to kind of wrap up on Leeds, do you think they have the squad going into the Premier League that could compete, or actually would you be concerned? Of course, we know every club that comes up needs reinvestment, but how confident are you in the squad that's coming up now versus the squad that came up previously?
They're stronger than the squad that got relegated, absolutely. I think with what they've got now, they can compete in the Premier League. They'll make a really good fist to staying in the Premier League with the squad that they've got now. Said it to you before so many times on here, since the Championship was formed, there's only ever been 18 teams that have averaged over 2 points a season. With 4 of them doing it this season, it shows what the quality of the squads are. I mean, those players, what Pete spoke about, that are on loan, they're the ones that Leeds will need to cash in on, because you look at those players. Jack Harrison left under a bit of a cloud with the Leeds fans, so it might be difficult to integrate him back into the squad, into the Leeds side. But actually, you soon win fans over by winning games and scoring goals. So there is a call that maybe if you are in the Premier League, that could happen. But actually, you look at the players that are out on loan, apart from him, there's not many that, or there isn't any that would come in to the starting 11 that they've got. So they are definitely stronger than the team that got relegated in the Championship. I think they've got more than enough to compete, but with reinforcements, you would like to think, or I certainly would like to think, that they're back in the Premier League for a while to come, and not just a yo-yo club now.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.